Okay, so we're recording. Just a reminder to folks, I unveiled a bunch of modules. There's not a whole bunch of stuff in the modules for from now until fall break. It's only workshopping songs. You should have turned in your last Pattison exercises, and then we go into just more and more workshop until the week before fall break. You have peer cover songs for class. So as you're listening to each other's songs and material and commenting on each other's workshop material over the next few weeks, just remember that you're going to have to cover someone else's song from class. And also remember, when you're uploading your stuff and you're uploading your lyrics and chords like that, just do as much as you can to teach other people your songs, because that's what the class is about writing songs. And so that's where the main work is from now on throughout. So next week we will have Wheelchair Sports Camp and Joshua Trinidad. So Joshua Trinidad is the trumpet player in Wheelchair Sports Camp, but he has his own albums as well. And then the week after that, for synchronous classes, I will be going over in more detail what the final EP assignment is. And so, Chris, I know that you sent an email about that the other week. And I have to be kind of open in terms of how the EP assignment is going to go, because people are just in very different places in the class. But you can just think of it right now as you're writing all of these songs. There are five original song workshops, and then I'm requiring about six-ish songs for the EP, and then some other stuff around it, like related to marketing types of stuff as well. And that might change different. It might be different for different people depending on how they want to release their material. And so some people are writing stuff and releasing it right away right now, and other people are just it's just going to be enough for them to get an EP, a collection of songs. And also, I really hate the term EP because it means extended play, which it implies that there was a record that it's being extended from, but that's just what people use in the industry right now, and I don't get to choose. And now we've got more people in class too. So those of you who have just joined, I just went over some stuff that's going to happen over the next few weeks, and the modules are now open for you up until fall break, and so you can do that work and upload your work whenever you want. Just make sure to go back and comment on other people's work once more people upload their songs. Okay, so this is Jeff Linsenmaier, who's done lots and lots of different things. I mean, we played in bands together a really, really long time ago, but Jeff has gone on and, uh, performed. Like Jeff's met Bono. Haven't you met Bono? Yeah. um, so, and he's worked with Frank Ocean, and I know that a lot of people are Frank Ocean fans in here. And he also runs with Sean King, I think, right? Still, a company called Color Wheel, which does commercial music, and so a lot of or music for commercials, right? So I know a lot of people have had questions about how to do that kind of work, and so that's definitely stuff. He did auxiliary musician for the Fray for a long time. He was in Woven Hand, another great Denver band, for a long time, and Munley, a great Denver band. Now it's called Munley UK, or something like Denver Broncos UK. I don't know what it. I can't remember his new project.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And also, what am I forgetting? Oh, and now you've been doing like country acts, and I don't know so much about what you've been doing lately, so you might talk about that.
What should I give it just a little background first? Kind of like um, yeah, kind of what Roger hit on a lot of points. But basically, my kind of journey was, kid with too much emotions, start band with Roger. Um, and that was great for me because we got that was sort of my first band and group and musical experience, and we got to tour Europe and do all of these things that were sort of bucket lists for me. But I did that for a long time, and then I started playing in Munley, like he said, and our old band, the Czars, with John Grant, and then that kind of mushroomed into playing with Nathaniel Rateliff as well. So I was playing in all three, and then as I started moving out of those a little bit, I started getting more into being a like hired gun, quote unquote. So that's when I started playing with the Fray, and I played with them for 10 years. And I was basically like a keyboardist, multi-instrumentalist. And I just kind of did any extra instrument that they had, sang backups, played a little bit of guitar, played a lot of keys, played timbales, congas, anything the song that needed. And that's known as an auxiliary person. While I was doing that, I also, well, I was playing in Woven Hand, which was a really great experience for me. But I also started learning in the Fray stuff. I started learning Ableton and supporting tracks. So that, it started out as a, they wanted, like we were playing a live show and they wanted, like a drum machine playing behind it the whole time. So I figured out how to do that. And then eventually it was more and more instruments, and basically the short story is that has become its own job now. It no longer is, especially in big productions and big concerts, it's an absolute must. And so I basically I got really into the Ableton stuff, and I started doing more and more of just Ableton. And that's what brought me to like Frank Ocean. I did the Channel Orange, his big Channel Orange tour back in the day, and I was just the Ableton guy. That was my first gig where I was just playing Ableton computers and just doing playback. And we actually did shows where it was just him on a stage with a big, huge video wall, and then me off to the side playing all the music. So, and that's become a big thing now. So now that's pretty much all I do. That's about 5-6 years ago now, I moved from Denver to Nashville because I was getting so many calls in Nashville and LA to do just the track stuff. So basically I moved to Nashville and I started working with a guy named Thomas Rhett, and I worked with him for about 8 months, 10 months. And then I ended up getting picked up by Keith Urban, and that's who I still work for now. So now I tour with Keith Urban, and I build tracks for other bands like Kenny Chesney. I go in and do all of his rehearsals for him, and meaning I program all the tracks and help make the clicks and counts and help design, figure out what the show is going to be musically. And then it also, Ableton now has become a way of controlling all of the other machines and elements around it. So I do a lot of extracurricular programming, and that's what makes it a big job, and its own thing, and not just another musician. So this is sort of another option you guys can think about maybe when you're thinking about like, how do I do this? Because this is, how do I get into music and how do I make a living at it and stuff. I found, if I take Nashville or LA, or especially, it's like I kind of ended up specializing in this just because there's 10,000 drummers in each of those cities and they're all great and they're all trying to make it, and it's really politicized. And then there's maybe 10 Ableton programmers, and Ableton now is it tells the lights what to do. So when you're at a big concert and the lights are kind of, the music's like da 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 da, and the lights kind of go boo 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 boo, like that's Ableton. That's what's doing that. Like Ableton is telling the lighting console what to do. And so now that's what I do now. I go in and program, like when I push this play button, the front of house console, audio console, is going to turn itself on. And there's going to be a big sub drop, and then these big lights are going to come up. And so I make that music, like the intros and the in between the songs, and add beats to songs. So my job now is being part producer, part playback engineer, part music director. You kind of have to wear a lot of hats, and then part live musician, because the way my specialty now is I kind of play Ableton and tracks like a band member. So when, like, Keith Urban's a great guitar player, and when he'll just sort of say, break it down, and he'll want to play guitar solo for 5 minutes while he talks to the audience. I'm muting things and looping things in real time and making sure that the way I loop the lights is okay. And if that doesn't work, then I have different microphones that I say, okay, lighting guy, you're on your own. You're taking this one. So it ends up being a big job. So basically that's what I do now. That's like, a lot of people don't even know that I play instruments, which is kind of funny, because all I do is Ableton, because that's such a demanding, there's just a lot of work, and there's not a lot of people doing it not a lot of people who are interested in that. So I hope that helps a little, just my background.
Yeah, and then
And,
talk a
yeah.
little bit about Dust on the Breakers too, because I gave people that stuff. So
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're also continuing to write songs and
Yeah. Well, that kind of gets me into when I started music, I honestly, it was just a form of therapy. I didn't start playing music because I wanted to be a good musician, or I wanted a job or a career in it. I was just a guy who had too much emotion, and I really needed that a sort of release valve built into my life, so that I could kind of just be normal. And it kind of enabled me to be a normal human. So when I was a kid, I played sports all the time, and I had this outlet of sports, and it would kind of reset me. When I became a teenager, I loved music so much, it just quickly became music after I went to my first concert. So um, all that then I go and I do all these other things, and I'm playing for other bands and learning their songs and helping making their songs better. And in the meantime, I'm still this regular human who needs an outlet, and who gets a little, like kind of screwy when I don't have my outlet. And all these extra emotions are building up. So Dust on the Breakers was, and I still do these sort of things. But Dust on the Breakers in particular was just me and all my friends, and we just wanted to write to write, just for the pure expression of it. And it didn't matter what happened, and we weren't gonna, blow up and get signed, and we weren't gonna make the songs perfect, and get into this, like, in my regular job in the pop stuff, I do session stuff on the side, and it gets into this, like, well, if you put this clap in, it's like 4% more relatable than this other clap sound, like, that's what I was trying to get away from with Dust on the Breakers. It's like, this is just going to be expression, and whoever likes it. And so now, in a way, I sort of live this dual life where I have all my regular jobs and I do all that, and then if I get overwhelmed from that, I end up still in front of my computer, but I'm just playing ambient music. Like, I love long, drawn out tones, and putting 5 delay pedals on a synthesizer, and I love knob tweaking and stuff. So that's still sort of my outlet. And I have to have kind of both to keep this balance. Like when I do a lot of my own creative music, I feel really ready to come and and be productive in my jobs, music job stuff. And when I do a lot of my music job, I really need that extracurricular to kind of balance me out. So I hope that kind of explains what the Dust on the Breakers is. And yeah, I'm a kind of, if in terms of songwriting, I'm definitely, that people have a lot of different styles, and my style is definitely a why style. Like, why does there need to be a chorus? Why can there only be one lead vocal? Why can't why can't a verse just be one note? Can I have a one note verse? And I don't think that'll ever sell me 10 million albums, but it's really fun. And around Nashville, I've kind of become this song needs something really weird on it. Let's send it to Jeff. That's sort of my session specialty. So I guess it's working out in its own strange, peculiar way. Yeah. But
Well,
that's,
I was just talking to the students. You guys have any questions for Jeff?
so I can talk a little bit about the color wheel stuff as well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So yeah, I do all that. And I also do, one of the main things I do for the past 6 years is just make commercials. So I started out just making them all by myself with Sean King from Devotchka. And we have another partner who was one of the heads of purchasing music at HBO. So it's the three of us, and we run just like a little licensing company, partially out of Denver and partially out of here in Nashville. And what that means is basically our company specializes in doing custom songs, mostly for TV ads. So we've done Jack Daniels, like Levi's. We've done Botox, and, Juvederm. Right now, we're doing a ad for a new AIDS drug coming out, and that's become a really big thing, I guess, in terms of people making money in music, musicians making money in music. So that might be an interesting thing to talk about a little bit if anybody wants to hear about that, or hear more about the tracks thing, or hear more about Nashville songwriting, doing session stuff. I don't know.
The whole writing for commercials sounds really interesting. If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, so basically, I've been doing it for like 12 or 13 years. I did it with a bunch of Denver ad agencies, and then that kind of ended up blossoming into working with more national ad agencies. And now basically what happens is we have a licensing company, and I'm kind of the head of the creative side of it, and which means I work with all the artists, or Sean King and I work with all the artists, and we have a stable of about 15 artists that we represent. And basically what happens is I'll get a call from a music director, or an ad agency, or a art director, or a producer, maybe for a TV show or something. And they call me and they say, hey, we are looking for this song, something like this pop song, or we think we like this style, but we don't know what we want. And they'll send me, if they've already made a commercial, they'll say, here's a commercial. What do you guys think? Give us some ideas for songs. And then we'll take that and we'll score to the commercial, or we'll score to a storyboard, that they send. Here's the feel of the songs, and here's a bunch of photos, and here's what the commercial is going to say. And we write, and then we give them multiple options, and then they pick one and say, we really like this one. Can this one, get really big when the video cuts to this scene and stuff like that. So basically we're just scoring in real time we're just scoring commercials for people in real time, and sending it to them. And that in particular, I think the one thing that I was going to say in terms of business is, the business of being a musician is like, Roger was just saying that, like, it's a common theme that, the money that used to be there, the traditional forms of income for especially larger labels and things like that, they're not really, or they're going by the wayside more and more. So the music as an industry is in the middle of somewhat of a profound change. And I think as one of the biggest results of that for me and all of my musician friends, and you guys, if you're trying to get into music, is going to be, I think the days of somebody being a drummer or, like just wearing one hat, those days are sort of gone. So or being just a songwriter, for example, say you want to graduate and you want to become a songwriter and go and write songs. I think I have a lot of friends that do that, but most of my friends that are songwriters are also like working with Color Wheel, they're writing songs, and then I'm saying, hey, I got a pitch for, like Academy Sports, and they want this sort of a song, and they're writing for me, and then they're writing for another person, and they're like peddling like movie trailers, to another company, and then they're going in and writing songs as much as they can. So I think the licensing is a really good way of making money as an artist, but also like being able to supplement what you do, and also stay musical and get better,
How would you get, or how would you catch interest to these companies? Or would it just kind of be like, hello, I'm so-and-so and I write music? And the thing that you kind of explained, that is kind of like my situation. I'm a songwriting major, and that's really what I'm aiming to do, like for my life is to write, and like the ideal, of course, would be writing for other artists and, being brought in for sessions and like, hey, I'm working on my album. Could you come in and, bring a couple songs, or like have a writing session, and help me write a song? That's like the ideal, but then I know that what you're talking about is a great way to make money. And so how would I catch attention of those people, about those companies like Color Wheel, the one that you mentioned that you work for?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the licensing stuff, well, the songwriting is completely doable. It's one of those, songwriting is one of those like 10,000 hour things where you have to put in a ton of hours somewhere in order to get noticed by someone or have a hit song,
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the licensing side of it, I think the best thing that I get from artists is like a reel, just a good reel. It doesn't have to be like I did all these commercials and check me out. That doesn't have to be that at all. But I think if my advice for people trying to get in is to pick a style that you're best at. Um, don't have a bunch of varied, like this is a rock and roll and this is a pop song and this is this. I would say pick what you're most passionate about and what you're best at. Decide on that one thing and make 10 short songs, and then make yourself a little reel. And there's a lot of color wheels around, and offering a lot of different things. And I think it's totally possible to just get in with one of these companies, but also because the industry is so saturated now, my advice to you would be to get in with 5 of these companies, so you're kind of,
Yeah.
because the good thing about licensing is, say you make a song, the industry is so saturated and competitive now, you can come to a company like Color Wheel and say, Color Wheel is completely non-exclusive, which means you can write your song. You can say, Color Wheel, you should put this song on like a Jack Daniels ad or whatever. And then you can go to another company and say, and you should put this song on one of your big ads or in this movie. And it can work for both unless the song gets bought up, in which case you would get a lot of money for it. So yeah, I think getting a reel and just sending the reel around to the different companies. It's a great way to get started.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Heather asked a question in the chat. She says, how did you get into that line of work? Did those people or companies reach out to you, or did you have to reach out to them?
So when I very first started, what I did was, now there's a lot of like a website like MusicBed, right? So these ad agencies can go to these websites or companies, and they have 10,000 songs just waiting for them, and they can pick one song and say, well, this is good, and they put it on behind the ad, and that's the ad. So how I got started was in Denver. I had a few friends in the ad industry, and I went to them and I said, hey, like, can I make a song for your commercial? And then you can just put it in with all the other songs you were going to pick anyway. And if you win, that kind of music is called needle drop. You can put me in with all your needle drop music. And if I win, you can pay me what you would have paid the needle drop, but then let me score something and prove to you why it's worth more money. So I had a few friends say yes, and the first time I did it, I landed a job. And I did it with like the same thing with 3 other companies. I ended up getting in with all of them. And it started out kind of small, and then the relationship, because they could show the client what, oh, we have a musician that's scoring this for you, and they'll change it to whatever you want. And so that's how I landed my first jobs. And then that kind of turned into people seeking me out. And I was pretty fortunate getting in with a lot of bigger companies. And now I have just like regular clients. So I'm constantly working with same big agencies and landing big jobs pretty consistently. But that's how I got my start, at least. And then when I got into the big agencies, I literally did what I suggested to Mario. So my first big ad, I got a call from a big agency, and the very first ad that I did, that was like a really big, it was a big deal if I landed it, and I didn't know what to do, and I was up against really big studios and major labels, and trying to peddle their new hits. And what I did was I said, hey, ad agents, I made a video that said, hey, ad agency, like, you should totally hire me. Like, we can make you a song like this. And I made them a song. And then I said, or we can make you a song that sounds like this. And it was like a completely different song. I said, or we can mix them. And then I mixed the two songs together. And I basically made an ad for myself with my friends using their video reels that they had put together to try to get video jobs. We just used the footage that they had shot, and I made video to it, and we made like an ad, and they sent it in, and the ad agency literally kind of, they were there with their big creatives meeting, and they looked at it and they said, this dude made an ad to land an ad. That's super weird. So they went into their like big studio and watched it in their movie theater, because of course ad agencies, it's so Mad Men, they have a movie theater. And they were like, this dude is so weird. He just made an ad to try to land an ad. And that's how I became a finalist. So, yeah. Yeah. So now I'm trying to do that for other artists. You know, we negotiate the deals and the money, and handle all the paperwork, and I go to all the creatives meetings, and hopefully that opens up people like you guys to write and create, and then I help manage, and I help produce the songs, and yeah, that's the gig. And we do work with a lot of, like Mario, we work with a ton of writers. So
That sounds so exciting, but like competitive at the same time.
it is, man, it is. But the funny thing about this industry is it's unbelievably competitive. So I think if you're naturally a determined or competitive individual, that's a really good asset to have. And if you're just a persistent human, that's a really great asset to have too in this industry, because it's a lot of knocking on doors, and it's a lot of trying songs, and a lot of, in music writing and in the ad world, where you can write a great song, and it just, nothing will happen for a long time. But the funny thing about it is, once you get one thing happening, then it's happening. And once you find I think it's the kind of thing that you'll probably work at it. Like, you guys will probably work at it for a year or two or three or four, and you won't notice a ton. But then one day you'll kind of wake up and you'll say, wait, I have like a crew of people, and we're pushing each other to be better. And I think that's what most of my songwriter, especially songwriter friends that have publishing deals and stuff like that we work with, and then do the licensing on the side. A lot of the publishing deal people, it's really competitive, but they're always working together and helping everyone's sending songs to each other and saying, hey, do this. Or, you know, a lot of my publishing friends, I mean, technically it's competitive, right? But I almost feel more supported than competitive with everyone around me. Because I'll literally, I mean, I've had, you know, when people are submitting for cuts on albums and stuff, I've recorded beats and tracks for songs that were competitive for my song, and vice versa. You know, like, I've had guitar players play guitar on my song, which was getting pitched up against their songs. You know, so it's really
crazy.
Yeah, it's really.
You probably have to be like, oh shit, this is really good, like in your head. Be like, oh shit, the song's awesome. And then
Yeah,
just like have your confidence still, like that they'll choose yours.
yeah. Yeah, you have to have a lot of belief in yourself and also the ability to just not care when someone says, because you're gonna get 1,000 no's, you know. And maybe, I mean, maybe it would be productive because maybe I can get some of my friends to come and talk to you specifically about the um, pub deals and songwriting and that kind of thing, because that's definitely a world. Um,
That would be awesome.
yeah, cool. I'll talk to Roger about that.
Yeah,
I'm more, in the, I'm more in the world of like the live show and the obviously the ads. Um, so I'm working a ton with people that have publishing deals.
there are two things. So some of the, what you were just talking about, like came up with Maria Kohler last week, like kitty crimes.
Yeah,
This idea of like community and thinking of yourself like without being an asshole, like egotistical, but like thinking of yourself like in your community as bigger than than it is, like taking your friends seriously as artists. This is a big thing for me. This is why you guys have to cover each other's pure songs, like or cover songs in classes, like because it's about community. So can you talk more about how you built that, and particularly like you said, go with your own style, the thing that you do really really well on the one hand, and then on the other hand, it's like you've worked with like Frank Ocean's music is really really different than Woven Hand, and it's really, really different than the Fray, and really different than Keith Urban. And so I can see like the live show thing, but do you have to have like a kind of aesthetic sensibility to like, like be in tune with what Keith Urban is doing when he wants to play guitar solo for a while, and then versus Frank Ocean, or if you're working with an MC who wants to freestyle, you know all of a sudden.
yeah. So I mean, in terms of that particular pocket of work, um, yeah, I think that's, and kind of speaking more broadly, I think that's one of the hardest and most rewarding things I've had to do as an artist is just, and this is, it's different for everyone, but for me personally, one of the hardest things I had to do is admit that I was good at something. Because my mentality for all the time was, well, yeah, I'm doing this stuff, but I need to be better. This is what I can be better at, and this is what I can be better at. This is what I have to learn. Um, and I think one of the big moments that kind of took me over to another level was me kind of sitting down with myself and admitting what I'm good at. And one of the things that I'm personally good at is, well, I would say two things. One thing that I'm really good at is listening and being able to define the feeling and the vibe of songs. That's one thing I'm really good at. And then just on a very technical level, Roger knows that I'm pretty unconventional. Like even even now, like Keith will, or the other day we were playing. They needed some stuff, some tracks done, and we were playing. Keith Urban was playing a show with Julia Michaels, and so we all got in the back room and we were talking. And they said, "Oh, we'll write you a chart," and I had to pretend like I know. I would look down and say, "Oh, okay, it's like a bee with a diamond around it." And I would have to pretend like I knew what that meant, but I was just doing everything from ear. And it took me a long time to realize, well, that's a gift that I have. Like not everyone can listen to a song, remember it, and then figure it out on whatever instrument. And especially if I mean, I still don't know guitar chords, scales. I still don't know drum rudiments. And I still don't know my piano scales. But I can somehow go like this, and it magically kind of works. so that was one thing. When it comes to like working with Frank Ocean and uh, like you have these moments where that was a really scary thing for me, because it was suddenly I was thrown in the deep end, and everybody who was, like the first day that I went there, I was in, I just went to Frank Ocean's house and we sat there with the music director, his name is Ricky Minor. And he was like, Whitney Houston's music director and like Prince's music director. And, like he's put together some of the biggest shows that we've ever seen, and just an insane musician. And suddenly I'm sitting down with them, and I think clicking into this sort of deep thing of like, emotion, me having to sit down with myself and know and figure out what I'm good at and admit that to myself. In these big moments, I was able to go back and kind of and say, well, no, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm gonna do. So I was sitting with everyone, and then I can extend that to any musical genre or range or situation. So I'm basically trying to do what I do best. And then once I knew that, I start extending that out to other people. And I started looking around, or started working with friends, and certain relationships creatively just made much more sense than others. And now I'm kind of in a space where I just work with all these people creatively, and I have a big crew, and we're all kind of filling in each other's holes. And most of my friends are good at things that I'm not good at, and I'm good at things that they're not good at. And so it's definitely a situation where everybody is helping everyone to be better and propping everyone up. And the other thing I wanted to say is, no matter what level you're on, what level your income is, man, honestly, it's all the same. Like I talked to my friend yesterday who's like a big songwriter, and he was just like, he was completely frustrated. He was like, I'm a loser. Like, no one likes my songs. And I was like, dude, you've had like 5 #1 songs. And he was like, yeah, but I wrote like 5,000 songs and I've only had 5 #1s, And so it's so important to have that crew of people, who's helping you out and giving you encouragement when you're down. Because you're going to find that confidence, and you'll find what you're good at, and then you're going to forget it. I mean, it's hard to get it's hard for people to tell no all the time, and to keep your base. So sometimes you're going to lose it, and you need the people around you to help keep you there.
Other questions for people that people have?
Could you take us through your process of creating your own music? Like how you go about doing that? I know everyone always does a common question like when we have the guest, and I'm always curious to hear about like their process. Like how do you sit down and tell yourself like, hey, I'm gonna write a song or I'm gonna create something? Like, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Most of my So when I sit down now, I still, the impetus to write it is still just sort of a base level need for me to get something out. So I start there, and the way I write has really, really changed over the years as what I did changed. So I used to sit down at a piano and write, um, And now I do Ableton so much, and I have to do things so quickly, that in terms of a process, when I sit down and write my own stuff, a lot of my process now is getting whatever, like if I'm writing a song with lyrics, I'll lay something down and I'll throw something onto MIDI. It's become a lot more computer based. That's what I'll say. I'll throw something onto MIDI, leave the vocals where they are, and just spend time going, like, it's almost sound manipulation more than it is arrangement, because I'm taking a lot of what I do now when I'm thinking of writing and how I write songs is I'll take that MIDI and run it through 3 or 4 synths, and then a lot of it is just about the inspiring parts to me is like the automations of filters opening up and closing or things wandering away. So a lot of like my creative process now is just get a bass and then wander around the area that I've created, because the area by itself, I start getting into like certain I start making myself parameters, like is this song saying something very specific, or is this song saying something more out there in the ether? And I literally will try to my parameters become about that. Like if it's something more abstract, then I'm thinking a lot more about my reverbs, and I'm thinking a lot about how do I create tension in sound. Like how do I create, like I can take something that I can, if I record in my room here, I'll record something really, really close and then add a reverb with a lot of pre-delay, because there's something about the tension of something being really close, but then suddenly sounding really far away. Like a lot of my process now is about creating tensions and exploring what tensions are in each song, and then how do I magnify these? How do I accent or magnify these like tensions and intentions? I don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but that's sort of my process, is like foundation, tension, and intention, wandering around in that realm. And then it goes to the next level, which is there's different kinds of creativity. There's 2 of the kinds are like additive and subtractive. I know I'm a subtractive creative person. So in that middle phase of tension and intention, I record everything. I'll record 100 tracks and then in the next one, I just start carving it out. You know, like I'll start whittling away everything that doesn't need to be there. And then that's when I sort of my logical, as much of a logical brain that I have, that starts taking over. And I'm trying to polish it, make it sound straightforward, make sure nothing's interfering with anything else. And at the end of that, that's my song. Kind of like a 3-step process for me personally.
So that
No,
makes,
that's really. Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Mari. What were you gonna say?
I don't know. I was just saying that it's like I love the way that you describe that. It's really interesting. And I'd have to agree with you with the whole technology thing, because that's how it's turned for me as well. Like I sit down at my laptop and I open up my I use Logic X Pro.
Yeah.
And I'll like find a synth, and then I'll like try some. I really want the synth to sound weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I just got another call. I just ended it. I really want the synth to sound weird or different or like not like something that I've heard before. And then I'll just loop it and I'll like sing melodies over it, and that's kind of like what I do.
Yeah,
Um, and when you're talking about the additive and the subtractive, I'm definitely additive now that you like when you said that. Like before I know it, my that little loop will have like a drum beat, and um, then I'll be attempting to add harmonies, and then I will like sing something, and then I'll if I don't like it, I'll like get rid of it and then sing it and then like keep trying to get it right until it gets all built up.
yeah,
I feel like lately I've been going at it like it sounds very simple to me. So the thing that you're talking about tension and stuff, I think I'm gonna like look into that a little bit and see how I could like have some tension in my stuff, because I feel like my stuff is just very straightforward and it feels very basic, but I really want more like significant changes, and I want like stranger sounds.
yeah, yeah, a lot. Um, yeah, that really speaks to, I think, like when you say that, I feel like you're a modern contemporary songwriter, because I think that's what so much of modern songwriting is these days, is actual manipulation of sound. It's not as much the creating. I mean, obviously you have to have something to work with, so you're creating to a certain degree, but so much of it these days is the manipulation, and I think a lot of that is it's just tool based, right? I mean, the tools that we have as musicians today that are just at our fingertips is pretty insane. And like the amount of possibilities sonically that you can create with these tools is almost endless. So like a lot of my writing has been, a lot of it honestly, when I think about it, is kind of finding tools I like, and like finding, like I'm just like you, like I want something to be super weird, and it's like, how do you find the weird thing, or like what is the weird thing that you like, and then moving on to a different song and like thinking about the tensions of it. um it's become a lot more theoretical for me, like writing, because I'll spend a lot of time saying there's something here, but I don't like the building blocks of it as much as I think, as much as I should. So I'm going to sit here and think about what it's saying and what that means to me sonically. So a lot of times, um, and that's sort of me just kind of wearing a producer hat, where, you know, you, I think of a lot of different parameters, and I think of like, what tools am I using? I think of how am I using these tools? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my, but yeah.
Everything that you said makes complete sense. No worries at all there.
Yeah,
Um,
finding your
yeah, no,
tools, and
yeah, no, the whole finding like what sounds good to you, finding the weird thing and finding the things that will work for you. And I use my voice in my music, and so it's important to find things that complement it and things that, set me apart and set what I sing us apart from, you know. I was gonna ask you, have you seen there's a show on Netflix. Well, I think it was a podcast. It's called Song Exploder.
oh no, I've heard about it though.
Yeah, it's super cool. And there's this episode with Alicia Keys and I think Sampha, and another songwriter. I spaced out on his name.
Yeah,
But they record and they show how they wrote the song called 3 Hour Drive, and kind of the whole like looking for weird and like the whole like sound design thing. It's like a really big thing in that episode.
yeah,
I don't know if that sounds like weird, but like you should like totally look at that. It's really interesting. It's on
yeah.
Netflix.
I will. I definitely will. I mean, if you can find like a good, hooky weirdness, I mean, you're really onto something, because I think it's sort of the holy grail right now in songwriting, you know, especially in terms of in song production. I think, you know, because it's the Wild West in terms of what you can make. So, I mean, you know, like years ago, we had guitars and keyboards, and synthesizers were crazy because they were the newest thing. Now I start with a synthesizer, and a lot of times it doesn't even matter what sound I start with, because I'm going to mess it up so much, you know? Like,
Yeah, and there's literally so much to do. Like, I look at all the effects that I could do and like all the things I can put on the sounds, and I think about I love watching videos that are like, this is how I made the song. Like this is how I like there's Diary of a Song on YouTube, and then there's this other, and then of course Song Exploder, and then there's this other I think it's on Genius, and it shows how the song was produced. Like it really comes down to that, like not even really how the song was written.
yeah.
And I was watching this one episode with I think I don't really know the name of the producer, but he was producing a song, and I'm like spacing on the rapper's name too. But anyway, he was just explaining. He's like, he uses Fruity Loops, and he was just like saying like, yeah, like this one synth right here has like 18 different like effects on it, like to make it sound like that. And like this is crazy to me. Like he literally like went through all of them, and then think about all the different like little knobs and little buttons and things you can do in the effects. It's like it was insane to me, you know, that they do all these things, and I want to do that. I want to be a producer like that, you know, that like, oh, this needs this, or I think I need to do this, and you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of plugins now, or are you still trying to, you use the stuff that's native to you said you had Logic Pro?
Yeah, so I just use whatever Logic Pro has to offer, but I know that there's lots of other things you could bring into it. So I've been looking into finding like a good bundle to buy to like, you know, explore that kind of thing, like with more synths. I really want to get a really good 808, like find a really good 808 pack.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, I would, yeah. So are you ever on Splice?
I haven't really been on it, but Kitty Crimes, I believe, was talking, right, Roger? Kitty Crimes was talking about Splice. No.
She probably was. She actually works with Color Wheel a lot, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
And so Splice there's a bunch of samples, and that's what most people use it for, is the big sample libraries that they have. But there's also like there's a bunch of plugins, like, so you can go to, or there's a plugin section there. There's a lot of stuff that you might be interested in, that because a lot of like the style I hear you describing is a lot of the plugins that are here in Splice. So like Serum is, I don't know if you've heard of that, but that's a affordable, really versatile, amazing synth. And then there's a couple other plugins, and you can rent to own them, which is also pretty cool.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, I make predominantly I would say R&B, but then I dip into like pop. And pop and R&B are like kind of where I stay the majority of the time. I
Yeah.
think it's like the one that best fits me, but then I also make some like experimental stuff like on the side. I don't really show it to anyone, but like it's stuff that's like a little weirder that I make, but that's pretty much where I stay. I'll definitely look into that, into this place.
Yeah, you should just wander around the plugins section. And when you say 808, were you talking about for beats or sub?
Sub.
right? Because one option for you, there's tons of rent to own uh, or where subscription style things plugins now. So one of the things you might want to look into in particular is I think the Roland Cloud is $19.99 a month.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Let me write that down.
Yeah. So that might actually be cool for you to like, just, you could spend $20. You can go, they have a 808 plugin, they have a 909 plugin, they have Juno synths. I mean, for what you get in that particular subscription service, I don't know if you can beat that. Just because they have so many legendary old synths and drum machines that they've rebuilt and so well. So
Yeah.
I might recommend that.
That sounds. I'll definitely look into that one. That sounds super interesting to me. With and the whole like having to like a hint of those classical like older synths that you would hear like in the beginning of synths, like when they were first coming out and stuff. I would love to use some of those too.
Yeah.
I just love music. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah. The other thing I might write down for you is I've been using and a lot of my friends, actually, a lot of my songwriting friends have been using this plugin that is on Splice, and it's called RC20. And it's super affordable. It's super simple, and it's just kind of like, it's just vibe. It's just a vibe plugin. So it's got like,
Yes, I need vibes in my life.
That's what made me, when you were talking about like how your creativity is, I think you'd get a lot of use out of it. It just adds like little noise, a little bit of distortion. It can make it sound like kind of cassette tapey. It's got like a little bit of a reverb.
I love things like that. Yeah, I love things like that.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Thank you so much. Sorry, hopefully I didn't take you away from the from the other questions that might have been there.
And the last thing I'll say is, if you ever get really serious and crazy and you want to spend money, do Universal Audio. I don't know.
Universal Audio?
Yeah, do you know anything about them? So all my songwriter friends, in terms of tools, that's probably the number one tool that all of them use. So and they use that, they make audio interfaces, so you just have this Universal Audio interface, your microphone plugged into that, and then you would have that plugged into your computer, and you're recording into Logic. But the really cool thing about Universal Audio is they make a lot of plugins, and when you buy the Universal Audio thing, interface, you get a lot of the plugins that they just come with it, and they're amazing. So you get amazing like compressors and distressors and things like this that you can play with, and they're stored in the interface. So, which means you don't have to, your computer doesn't have to do a bunch of heavy lifting, because the Universal Audio interfaces are basically kind of like their own computer, and they're housing all of the plugins, and you're using them all from there. So there's no latency, and when you sing, you're hearing yourself sing in real time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think, and now that you say this, I think I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I've seen them before.
Yeah, if you go bonkers and one year or something, that's what I would go bonkers on.
Thank you. That's awesome. I will go bonkers on that hopefully soon.
Yeah. Number one thing. All my friends, everyone I know uses Universal Audio, and I know people that mix on it now, which is kind of crazy.
Dang, that's awesome.
Yeah, like big stuff.
Wow. Well, definitely I will consider that, and I'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Does anybody else have questions, or I can probably go all day on
Well,
plugins.
funny. In my earlier lectures, the module lectures on aesthetics, if you guys watch those or remember them, like remember I contrasted, like on the one hand you have poetry or poetics, and then on the other hand you have rhetoric. And I was saying that like now part of what songwriting is it really blends the two of them, because like poetry just means to make, or poetry is like the message, but rhetoric is like how you convince people of it, and so much of it is just blended in. Or like when you guys were talking, there's like these pedal shows with Ed O'Brien from Radiohead where he basically just says the same thing. Like he's like, the way that we write as a band is we just try to find cool sounds, like, but they do it as a band. And he's like, and if you don't find something cool enough like as a sound, you just don't get to play on that song, because he's like, that really sucks. So I wanted that was leading me into thinking about, so I've known Jeff for a really long time, and like a lot of what you're saying about this tension and stuff, like it's like it makes a lot of sense to me from even when we were young, that like, because like playing with you, like a lot of times you would intentionally do some the counterintuitive thing, right? Like to try to like tease out like the emotional spaces of the song. Or like when you wrote songs, you would write lots and lots and lots of parts, and I would have to like learn the parts on guitar and stuff. So I wonder how that kind of, you also talked about that you sculpt. So I'm wondering about how when you work in a different medium, if you get a lot, like, because sculpting is the same thing. It's like you start with a block and you like whittle it down. Um, I'm wondering how that works, like the expanding out and coming back in works in terms of collaborative relationships, or is it something that you've had to give up on when you work with other people more? Or
Um, I'll say I have to package it better.
yeah.
It needs to be, I realized I started out by just kind of doing what I normally do, and then very quickly realized that like, okay, what's happening in my head, and I have some sort of baseline that I'm going off of. And if I just give someone 30 tracks without any context for that, what the baseline is, that's really messed up, and they'll do really messed up things to it. So, so um, now what I do is I still act kind of in the same way, because that's just my creative, that's my baseline, that's my palette, that's how I create. But also what I do is I go through and I throw probably 80% of what I do, I just throw away. And I'll take the rest and I'll say, and I'll make different folders even, where I'll say like, if I have a lot, I'll say, here's 3 distinct styles. Pick a style, pick whatever you want out of this style, and lose whatever you want. And I'm very open and vocal about saying, look, this is how I do things. Like, I just make too much. I don't expect, and I don't want you to use every single thing. Like, listen to something that sparks you and use it. And if something's not sparking you, don't think about. And so the first few times when I'm writing with people, we have to find this like nice balance of, like, because especially the first few times, a lot of people will they'll say, well, this guy did all this stuff, I have to use it all. And then I have to say, no, this is just how I work. So a lot of it is about communicating. And then after you do it 2 or 3 times, it's just like clockwork. Like, someone will open up the folder and listen to stuff and be like, nope, 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 nope. Ooh, yep, nope. And then it's over, Um, yeah, I hope that answers that.
Yeah, but that's like such a generous and collaborative way of doing it, rather than like, people might think of it at first as being controlling or something, but you're actually giving people lots of options. So,
Yeah, I'm really into collaborating. And I'm also, in terms of collaborating with people, one of the things that I'm best at is challenging them to be better, because I'm just naturally like, well, why does this have to be this way? You know, so a lot of times the things that I end up writing, the parts that I end up writing, end up opening doors to other places, you know, and I really intentionally try to do that, especially with the pop songs, because, or you know, that kind of like the session writing and stuff like that, because so much of that, it's like, man, you listen to a lot of songs that people are writing these days and trying to get, and all of these people are trying to get you know, cuts on these different albums. You listen to these songs and you're like, they're all good. Like, there's tons and tons of good songs. um, and a lot, my friends and I talk a lot about like the 2%, the 3%. What's that last 2 or 3% of something that's going to put your song over the top versus all these other songs? Because they're all good. There's so many are good, and a lot of times what it ends up being is like a small moment when your voice breaks, or you know, like right now I'm working with a guy that he's really calm and really quiet and sings really close to the mic and has these gorgeous songs. Like, you listen to a song and you're like, um, I have to call my mom. Like, I don't call my mom enough, you know, like he's that kind of an artist. Um, one of the byproducts of that is his lyrics are very composed, and the way he delivers is very composed. And he had one song that did really well, it was kind of like a hit, and we were talking about his song, and he's like, I don't know why this one landed. And I was like, it was because you weren't as composed. Like, there were these moments, in particularly, and when he was singing, where his voice was just sort of breaking up, and the song was kind of like about being relieved to be home, and the way the song was talking about, it's like the song is called Home or something, and it's like, home where my heart is, and it's my beginning and end, and I'm home. But when he was singing those songs, his voice was kind of breaking up, and it almost alluded to this, like, even in your vocal performance, you got home and you just didn't care how you sang anymore because you're relaxing. Like, that was the 2 or 3% that put that over. It wasn't him reciting. It was him literally sounding relieved to be home. You know, so I think a lot of modern songwriting you know, you get to that like 97%. You're like, this is 90% there. And then one really good thing for that, when you're searching for that last 2 or 3%, is, you know, the tension that you were talking about, you know, between poetry and rhetoric, and you can take that to as down as many levels or up as many levels as you want. But that's, I think you're talking about, that's definitely like the last couple percentages, that it's like somebody will have, like us, like I've heard a million songs, and then still there's songs that I'll hear and it'll just like punch me in the gut, you know, and I get obsessed, and I don't know how, like, I can't believe I'm feeling this. This makes me feel this way. I feel new emotions, you know, and yeah, a lot of times you really have to explore the gray areas to get that last couple percent. You have to go into the wilderness to find that kind of stuff.
And so that's different than what you said earlier on in the talk, when you were talking about being in the studio and they can choose a different hand clap, and that is going to be more of a percent like receptive. And
Mm-hmm.
we've talked a little bit about, I don't know if you know this book, but there's this book called The Song Machine, which is all about algorithms that like the major labels can just they can plug the album, they can just feed it into the algorithm and it will tell you whether or not it will be a hit, right? And there's in the book it's like John Seabrook or Seagram, I can't remember his actual name right now. He talks about Kelly Clarkson and like really really big name people. So there is that kind of, you know, you were talking about different hand claps and whether or not that gets more percentage, but that's different than the way you were just talking about percentage right now, right? It
Yeah.
seems like there's something more emotional about what you're getting at right now.
That to me is the difference between writer and producer. You know, like I'm always having the hand clap conversation with like producers where they're like, you know, like, no, just listen to like this blankety blank song and listen to like the hand clap. Like it's just a little more attacky than this other one. And it's you're talking about music in this scientific through the you're thinking about music through this scientific lens. Whereas like when you're the writer and you're writing, I can't think about the clap, you know, especially when I'm in that like tension phase. When I'm in the beginning, I'm just puking everything out as quickly as I can. When I'm in the tension phase, I'm in the opposite mentality of the clap phase, you know, where I'm just putting a clap down or whatever. And then I'm just messing everything up and I'm wandering and I'm going left. And if this is the road, then I'm trying to get it off the road as much as I can, you know? And then, you know, when you're talking about polishing and you're going through all the little areas, you know, I do, because I have a background in stone sculpture, I do a lot of creating that way, you know, like, well, now I'm polishing the stone and making it shiny. That's the clap conversation. Then you're starting to get into how am I using my reverbs and are they helping my song or are they hurting my song? How am I using the clap? What's the tone of the clap and is it helping it or is it hurting it? You know, and in that phase, I tend to be a little more scientific and to try to wrangle in this like wild and free and like questioning everything. It's like, okay, now these things have to make sense with each other. And then, you know, and am I alluding to, does this remind me of a song in the past? That's a big thing, you know, with trying to get hits and is that illusion a good thing? And am I going to lean into that or lean away from that? And how do the claps help or hurt that? You know, so you're finding your goal, and then you're just, that phase to me, the clap phase is pushing your song, you're paving the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely talked about that. I gave a little module lecture on like the production process for Esme Patterson's first record, which it produced a few years, or now it's like a long time ago, not just a few years ago. But that's exactly that, like, you know, like how do you allude, like it's like, and she wasn't like an artist who, we didn't know what she was exactly going to be on that first person's record. So how do you allude, like, and I alluded a lot to Sinead O'Connor, or now I'm alluding to Stevie Nicks, or now I'm alluding to Ben E. King and like Stand By Me or that type of retro sound. And it like that becomes like about like your own musical knowledge and context and um, uh, so I'm gonna, we're just about at the end here, and I know Mario's just said that to say thank you and that he has
Oh
to,
yeah, talking.
but I wanted to let not to end on a negative note, but I just wanted to ask, like, um, have you ever had like major disagreements with 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 folks that you're collaborating with, or
Oh,
when it comes to even that last 3% or whatever?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, I've told, you know, I've told people they're crazy, you know, like, because that, I mean, but that's kind of a byproduct of working in the arts, right? And working in any sort of creative. You can't, I mean, sometimes you can write a song, you can put it out there and it can be what it is. And then sometimes you can write a song and you're like, oh my God, I think I expressed what I was trying to express, you know? And then when you're collaborating with somebody and they say, no, 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 that's not quite expressed well enough, then, you know, and I'm kind of like a sometimes I can get a little surly. So my reaction is pretty coarse, you know, at first. It's like, the hell are you talking about? Like you're, you know, and then it like kind of escalates from there. So that happens. But fortunately, kind of like that sense of community that we were talking about, it's like, well, that's, luckily I'm around people that say, well, Jeff's being Jeff and today's Monday and by Tuesday afternoon, he's just going to be regular Jeff again. So I'm just not going to reply to that, or I'm going to give him 24 hours or vice versa, you know, because I've had a lot of things like, I'm just like, this is not good, you know, and people come back and say, and be like, I hate you. You're an asshole. And then like, in, you know, like 2 weeks or later that it'll be like, okay, how can we make this better? You know? So, definitely a lot of that. And yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, even in my regular job, like a lot of creativity in the professional environment, thinking about the same thing is how are you selling your ideas? You know, it's, so that's one that, I mean, you can kind of use that to your advantage in the professional world where you get passionate about something and then the people around you are like, well, this must be really good. And then everyone believes in it. And, you know, so sometimes it's good to pick, it's definitely good to pick your battles, but sometimes it's good to be that person in a professional environment. And to be aware when you're stepping on someone else's authentic feelings. If someone is attached to a song, don't pee and poop all over it. You know, like think about specific things that you can say about the song, because that can really bite you in the butt.
Are there any, just in the last 2 minutes here, are there anybody else who have questions or anything? I just want to give students one more chance. Okay. Thanks very much, Jeff, for coming today. Um, and I'll upload the video later on today onto YouTube and all of that. And the students are saying thanks so much in the chat. So
thank you guys. Thanks for having me do this. This was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Tyler. It was really great. I know it's probably all over the place, but I appreciate you guys listening.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Be good, everyone.